Hey everyone, welcome back to the Belonging Experiment, where we talk about belonging, transitions, and everything in between. If you're new here, I'm Anu, and I've spent many years navigating life across India, Japan, and I'm currently living in Portugal, Europe. Moving, adapting, and figuring out where home really is, it's been a journey, and we're here to share it with all of you.
Yes, and I am Roby, and my story is pretty similar. I have lived in the Philippines and in Japan, and now I'm also in the US. And we have experienced firsthand the highs and the lows of settling into a new place. And I think that's exactly what today's episode is all about, the emotional roller coaster of
Well,
moving
we're
abroad.
calling this episode The Honeymoon and the Hangover because if you've ever moved to a new country, you do know what we mean. At first, everything feels so new and exciting and full of possibilities. Everything seems like an adventure. You look at everything positively. And then reality hits. And everything that I just described changes. So today we're breaking down the different phases of moving, what we expected, what surprised us, and how are we navigating through the situation to find our way.
Yes. And if you're new here, we usually start every episode with a simple question. I'm just checking in. What's one interesting thing that happened in the past week? So, Anu, tell me
Okay.
yours.
I had a bunch of things, but this one is by far for me the most interesting thing. It has nothing to do with today's topic. We were driving down, I think it was about 6 in the morning, and suddenly across the horizon, I'm trying to find the sunrise. And uh, I'm looking over the horizon, and then suddenly there is a flash of green light that I see just above the trees. My first instinct was fear because I was like, well, we're in Europe. You never know who's going to drop something in the country that you're living in. But I first panicked and I was expecting the worst. Well, nothing happened and it just disappeared. And I was like, oh, is it a shooting star? And then I realized that was a meteorite. It was the first time that I witnessed a meteorite with a green light and a
Wow.
long green tail. Apparently, this happens at least once or twice a year in Portugal. It was my first experience and it
Oh,
was
wait.
crazy.
Oh,
What
that's
about
so
you?
nice. Yes. Well, I joined a conference for work called the Customer Experience Conference. That's the line of work that I have. But the exciting part is I was able to meet some of our friends, colleagues from our previous company who joined the conference as well. So I think that's really, I think I needed that. I needed to meet my homies and just catch up what's happening in their work. And it feels like you just pick up from where you left off, I think. So that's the beauty of friendships, I guess. Once you move to different countries, sometimes we worry that we might not connect with our old friends, but I guess when you meet each other again, you kind of like just instantly you reconnect, you pick up where you left off, and that's it. It's as if I never left.
I mean, I know
That's
who
what I
you met
felt.
and I can about it.
But I also, yes, and they brought me some goodies too from Family Mart. So isn't
Like
that
the
fun?
expectations for us just
But I
family
think,
mart and convenience store
yeah,
goods.
Family Mart, just bring me something, pick me up something in Family Mart. And I think that's also connected to what we will talk about today, because now we met in a new country where I consider now my current home, where I reside. So it feels good to have friends coming over in your new country. So it's a story of settling. So that's the topic today. So we will discuss the honeymoon stage and the hangover stage, but I think we will start with the honeymoon stage first. The good things that happen. So my question to both of us is, do we remember the first few weeks and how that experience is like when we first landed? Well, in your case in Portugal, and in my case in the US. And yeah, so how is it like for you?
So for me, I think memory is fresh. So I can tell you three things
Right.
would be what I think is my, honeymoon. So I think in the beginning when I was here, the first few days, I realized that my diet consisted just of meat and veggies. I barely saw rice. I saw, of course, here and there. There were rice options. Somehow I didn't pick those items on the menu. And I noticed a visible difference in how my clothes started fitting me. And I thought, wow, is this going to be my diet for the rest of my life? Well, this is not such a bad diet, like no carb diet almost. So this one, I think, for me was the first wow factor that I had. The second one was I noticed that here people actually look at you. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Nobody's trying to avoid eye contact. They look at you, feel seen. You're not like an invisible entity walking around. So that felt a little good, I would say, to see that, oh, somebody notices that there's another human being here. And for me, the third thing that really stood out was anything and everything that I look at or I touch or I see is anywhere between 300 to 2000 years old. So I think there's a lot of history in Portugal. And if you think about it, a lot of I think the Roman civilization was very close here. The Moorish civilization, everything developed around here from the ninth century, from the 8th century. So everything, architecture, the buildings, everything is just, it's got so much history over here. I used to hate history as a kid, but ever since I came here, I like the idea of trying to understand where these things came from. Like, what is the story? So this is something that has been honeymoon,
And that's
basically.
it.
That was my first positive
Yeah.
impression. But you are in a land, in the land of possibilities. You are in the land where dreams come true. So, what were your first impression? What was your honeymoon like?
No, I really enjoyed listening to your top three because some of it has some similarities to what I have in my list as well. The first few weeks for me it's an English speaking country for me. So I realized I forgot how easy life should be, I think. And just, there's a lot of conveniences. I know that I thought, oh, Japan is so convenient with the 24 hours convenience stores that we have. But in a way, it also limits us because of the language. And now having lived here for a few months now, I realize how I could express myself more just because I'm not trying to think of the words that I could best communicate with the other person. So I think that's my wow factor the first few weeks I came in. The second is just the amount of nature that you have access to. So the national parks, it's all free. Well, sometimes you have to pay for a pass, but that's for the whole year. A lot of nature, but also a lot of history, as you mentioned. As we all know, US is also a lot of settlements before that. So in Wisconsin, it has a lot of German influence. So the buildings, the small towns that we have here looks like a city in
Oh,
Europe as well.
wow.
So I could relate to what you were saying about appreciating the buildings, and you'll see it's like the 1800s, 1900. And when we started looking for a house to buy, some of the houses were built in the 1900s and it's like 50, 60 years old. And you would see that the structure, it's made of brick, but these are actually the materials that actually lasted and they still are in good shape. So that's something that I really appreciate, just the nature, the different scenery, which I think mimics a little bit of Europe as well. And the third one in my list is just discovering the small towns. So we're not in a big city anymore, but we do have access to the big cities if we wanted to have a nice weekend and high-rise buildings. But on a daily basis, we have a more relaxed environment, walking around the lake. We have very nice cafes. So I guess in a way, coming from Tokyo, moving to quaint small city is a refreshing change in this season of my life. So those is Those are my honeymoon wow factors when I
That's a
moved in here.
fantastic transition to the Hangover, because you know why? Your honeymoon point number 3 is my hangover point number 1. Because when I came here, the first day that I came, I think it was funny because I posted about it on Instagram too. Because I was like, where are the people? I was in the city center. I was in the small town city center, right? And I didn't see anybody. I was there for almost like an hour. We went looking for restaurants. I
True.
barely saw
True.
anybody
Yeah.
on the road. And it was a beautiful weather. You know how Europeans love their sunny days. And it was, I think the temperature was like 10, 15 degrees more than it was in Japan. So for me, I was like, wow, people should be, frolicking on the streets. Where are they? Okay. And then after a point, it became a little too eerie for me to say, I struggle. I want to see people. Of course, when we used to walk in Shibuya, I'm the one who used to complain saying, oh my God, this place, you just run errands here. Like, why is everybody here? There's nothing to take pictures of. But I think I secretly enjoyed the crowds and, like watching people from the Starbucks be like,
Exactly.
oh my God,
Yes.
people are so silly. This is just a crossing. But now I'm at the crossing and I'm like, this is supposed to be like the main junction. Like, where is everybody? That was a little unnerving for me. And people are like, oh, just, go for a walk. And I'm like, I'm scared to go for a walk because there's no, I really like kilometers and kilometers. I can't see people. And, I come from India is very populated. So I'm always seeing people everywhere at any given time in day. And it was the same in Japan, like 3 a.m, take a taxi, come back. You see people on the road. So it was very, very unnerving for me.
Totally get you. That's the small towns are charming, but also it has a downside because then there's no one to talk to.
It's like there are days where I don't have anything on the schedule and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go out. And then I get dressed and I'm like, I don't want to go out.
No one's gonna share what your outfit is like. Like your new skirt today.
I think that was my first, the frustration or the hangover part of it. The second one,
what else is in your list?
Language. For me, I think when I started to study Portuguese, I was following these reels, and it is generally very difficult. I think the language, if you are a French speaker, you can learn Portuguese apparently in a month. So if you speak any of the Latin or the Romantic languages of Europe, it's very easy to learn Portuguese, and there's a lot of etymological connections between Portuguese and English. So it's really not very hard if you want to study the language. But when you're transitioning from Japanese to Portuguese while speaking English at home, and I really think the problem language in everything is English at this point, because the subject verb agreement is of Portuguese, and Japanese is a little bit similar, but I feel like English is just, they just decided to go a different way. So I think I blame English. That's the only way I can get over my initial hiccups. So of course I signed up on Duolingo. Did not help. I guess they will never sponsor us if it ever comes down to it.
Yeah.
But the Duolingo didn't help. I signed up for some online classes. I did some trial sessions and I really liked them, and I need to formalize them. So it's painful. I'm trying to push myself.
Yeah. With learning the new language, I was just wondering, because some people are just really gifted with learning a new language. It seems like it's their skill, right? And for the rest of us, I don't know, sometimes I blame age, which I think is a valid factor. And what I also heard about learning language is if it's a vital part of your job, then you're forced to if there's pressure. But if it's just a nice to have, then we're more lenient with ourselves. So maybe that's also the situation where, well, you know what? I don't really need to learn it. I could survive here without really learning.
Isn't that what happened with us with Japanese? Because even though we were making an effort to study the language, it was hard because we couldn't, I guess, for us, it was harder because we all speak in English at our desks. And of course, our Japanese colleagues would also speak in English because there was some terminologies they couldn't communicate.
You
So
can speak
I
English.
guess that was tricky. But I have one more point under my
Yeah, that's
frustration,
true.
and that's, I think, the weather.
Mhm.
When I came, the weather was, of course, much warmer than in Tokyo. So I really was like, oh, this is
Yeah.
so cool. Like, oh, maybe I don't need a big fat jacket. Maybe I'm just happy with like my trench coat. So the daytime
Yeah.
temperatures were much higher, like 17-ish, but at night it just drops. It drops to like 3, 4, where when we came to the car in the morning, there would be like a layer of ice on the car because of the sudden freeze.
Like a
And
mist. Yeah.
I don't know what I was thinking. I wear these open-toed shoes because it was a warm day, and I'm like, oh, I'm sweating. That didn't work. I got sick very often to a point where my house owner was like, he would scold me. He'd be like,
Oh, that's a
you need to
bummer.
cover your neck. You can't walk around like this. So I was sick and I was down for almost like a week, 10
Yeah.
days. And then I was like, I think I need to keep warm. It's still crazy because it's like 23 today. The highest temperature is like 23. The real feel is like
Yeah.
26 when you're in the sun. So you could technically walk around with a pair of shirts. But then after 7, it just drops to like 9 or something. So the difference
Wow.
is something that we are not used to. We're used to something a little bit milder in terms of morning and night temperature. But this is
Right.
definitely, I need to.
Yeah. I was wondering though if this is kind of like just a transition from winter to spring, or is it the normal
I
weather
tell you what,
situation
I'll let you know
there?
after a year.
Yeah, we will find out, I
1 year
guess.
later, I will answer this question.
Yes.
I will write down my observations and share them with you. But wait, I wanna know your frustrations.
Yes.
What are
But
your 3 or
yeah.
more or less?
Yes. Okay. So the first few weeks, and I think my honeymoon and my hangover is just mixing up. It wasn't necessarily a timeline that the hangover happened after a few months of living. So I could easily see some frustrations right away too. And that is driving, because here we don't have trains, public transportations.
Oh,
We barely have buses around because everyone just drives. Everyone needs to drive. So at the beginning, I can drive. I have a license back in the Philippines. I was able to get my license when I was in Japan. But, in Japan it was on the other side. So I was not confident to drive here. And the roads are just different. Driving style is different. And so I had to adjust with that. I wasn't confident with driving around. So I would always tag along with Kelly and said, okay, you'll be in the driver's seat and I will drive, and then, coach me what I need to do. So I think that was a frustration of mine because I wanted to, and of course, at the beginning, the first few months, I didn't have work. So I was stuck in my small city and I wanted to see something else. I wanted to go to the museum and all of that, but I was kind of stuck where I was. But yeah, I embraced that, but there was definitely a frustration. And the second thing that I had
oh
was,
my God.
so I came in July. So that means I'm eligible now to pay taxes. But that is something very complicated too. I think. And that's something you just learn when you're doing it, right? Because when we were in Japan, our employers were actually in charge of filing it in behalf of us. So here in the US, they will give you the documents, but you have to file it on your own. And I am not sure if at some point I'll be able to file it on my own, but you have to find an accountant. And there were even a lot of just questions whether we should report my previous income in Japan and pay for it. It's like, no way, I'm not going to pay. That was something I earned in Japan. If I have to pay, I'll pay that in Japan, not here. But I don't know. We're still figuring that out. But that's definitely one of the frustrations that I experienced. So you will experience that
Well,
this
I'm
year,
temporarily
I think.
unemployed, so I don't think I'll have to worry about that for a while now. I'll let me get through first my visa and paperwork.
Yeah.
That'll be
Yeah.
that'll be
Exactly.
my why did I do this
Exactly.
moment? And
That's the
then
next
we'll go
step
to
for you.
one step at a time,
Right.
Roby. Then
My last is just, I think it's related to what you mentioned. We are in a small community, so you need to exert an effort to participate in the community events to meet people. Otherwise, when you walk around here, you don't really just see people around, walking. Or we're actually in a university town. So there's a lot of students when the semester is currently going. But if it's summer break, for instance, they're all gone. So it's kind of like a dead city when they're all gone because they're also having their vacation. So I think that's just the mixture of, yes, I do love nature, but also can I just hang out in a place where I hear a lot of human beings talking? So yeah, kind of related to what
yeah,
you
not to
mentioned.
necessarily interact with them, but it's just nice to know that there are other human beings. Yeah,
Exactly. Not to
like don't talk to
interact.
me, but just talk amongst yourselves. I just want to listen to what you are saying.
Yeah. But before we go to, our next topic, I have a question. Do you think that we're over the honeymoon stage? Because is it a timeline like honeymoon and then now we're kind of like hangover, or is the honeymoon still ongoing? Because I feel like for me it's still ongoing. There's still a lot of new things that I experienced the first time, and I would be like, oh, this is nice. Oh, this is nice. So I was wondering what your
I
feeling
to
is
be
like.
very honest, I don't know. I wish I could say, oh, the honeymoon phase finishes in this timeline. My husband's been here obviously longer than me. There are things that even for him it's quite new, and he's like, oh, I didn't realize
I mean,
that this
yeah.
was the case. I think for me, I would still say I'm in the honeymoon phase because I'm going to be seeing my first European spring and experiencing my first European spring while I live here and not as a
Oh, that's
tourist.
true.
I feel like there needs to be some benchmark criteria to say you're over the honeymoon period when you have completed experiencing all the four seasons or something. Like I don't think it's something that you can finish very early. I would still say I'm transitioning. I'm
I
still in
don't
the
think
honeymoon
so.
phase because it's
Yeah.
easier to make mistakes in the honeymoon phase and say, "Oh, sorry, I had no idea."
Right. And maybe that is all, this is all happening all at the same time. The honeymoon stage, and then sometimes you get the frustration, but also you're trying to settle in. And so maybe we have a lot of highs and lows, but at the same time, we need to adapt in our new country, in our new city.
Mm.
And I think for me, when we talk about adaptation, right? I what I felt like, oh, I'm a local now, is when, so we had a wedding last October. I was 3 months in the country, but then I welcomed some friends and family members, and then I showed them around the city. So that felt to me like I'm a local because I'm showing them around. Oh, I
Oh
know a good coffee shop
yeah.
where we could go. Oh, I know where we could shop. So I think that feeling of being able to tell the friends or family members who were coming over where is a good spot is a sign for me that I'm adapting and I'm settling in. I don't know if you have that story because I know your family members were
I
also
think
there last
for
week.
me at this point they were like guinea pigs in terms of travel because there were certain things that I was very sure of, and I'm like, we need to do this. And then there were certain things which I personally was completely unprepared for. In Japan, when there's a huge storm, everybody would be notified. The company would give us information and say, go back home early. The trains will come to a standstill, or they will issue like a warning saying, next few days Shinkansens will not run because of this and this scenario. There was always, I think, very high alert for bad weather. Here, last week we experienced this crazy storm but I had no clue. Also because it's on me. I guess I don't watch television. I knew there were rains, but I didn't know it was bad. To a point where we went to one of the attractions with the family and we were wearing a poncho. I was very sure I was going to get blown away. And then I didn't know how bad it was because if I had known, I wouldn't have taken the family there at all. Because the next day, we had already driven to Porto by then. And then I saw on the news that trees had been uprooted, branches had fallen off on cars, cars were destroyed, and some cars were
Oh my
overturned. And there was a
God.
private jet apparently somewhere, which also was thrown from the runway. So I would have taken precautions with the family and not just said, oh, let's go to the Atlantic Ocean in the midst of a storm. I'm only glad that they're all safe at this point. So I think that showed very well that I'm still in my honeymoon phase because I'm like, we were learning
for
from
the
each
ship.
other at this point. And they were like, maybe we shouldn't do this today. Maybe we should do the other thing that we had in mind.
Okay. So the key learning there is once you start feeling that you're a local is when you're watching the news.
I guess that's the thing. So I guess until I have my Portuguese down, I can never be true local in that sense.
Yeah.
But one thing that I noticed when you were talking is you
Yeah.
were already like for everything that you said was a frustration, you were already solutioning and you were already saying, oh, but we had to do this. So I guess for you and me, because of the roles we've been in, it's a part of our it's a part of our mindset to say, yes, this is a problem. However,
However.
this is what we signed up for. And, we need to look at it differently.
Correct.
We need to
Yeah.
change our mindset. Yes, of course, we throw a tantrum. We should throw it because it's the most normal human thing to do. But you can't throw tantrum forever, right? We have to move on and say, okay,
Yeah.
so what am I going to do differently now that I know that this is working or not working for me?
Yeah. And I suddenly thought about this when you were just talking now, that probably our situations are somehow different because Kelly is actually originally from Wisconsin. So that also plays a big part in helping me to settle in because he knows the area, whereas both of you are new. Well, he came before you for a year, but still, like both of you are discovering together. Whereas here, we could go to his family, for instance. So maybe that creates a little bit of a feeling that this is his home. And that helps a lot for me to settle in as well. That's one part.
I think
of
if
it
you
as
think
well.
about our backgrounds, we also come from slightly different backgrounds in the sense that he's used to moving quite a bit because he before he even came to Japan, he was in Sweden. He studied in Sweden, so there was a lot of moving around that he did and travel that he did.
Oh,
So,
that's right.
and he is less emotional than I am, which is why I guess we're even married to each other in this moment.
That helps. That
So whenever
helps.
I get emotional about something,
That compliments
he
for
always
sure.
is like, gets practical about it. Some days I want to stab him. Some days I'm like, you're absolutely right. So he's been here for a year, which makes things a little bit easier for me. So when I go to order coffee, he tells me how to differentiate between different types of coffee. So that is something that is helpful for me because this is coffee country. And in coffee country, you need to know exactly what to order. And there are some times that I would just switch off my brain completely. I'm like, just give me coffee. I'm not asking you any questions, just give me coffee. Anything works. Anything
Nothing
works, yeah.
complicated.
I think my
Yeah.
taste, I used to be very stubborn with what I like and didn't like. Now I'm a little bit more fluid, which has been helpful for me. Just to say, I trust you at this point. So please give me what you think I would like. And it's been a little easier for me personally.
Yeah. Is there something that you're doing at the moment that helps you to settle, or do you feel like you're already settling in? You have settled, you're settling in, or are there things that you are planning to do to help you ease in and settling into your
My
new
greatest
city?
struggle in the last few days is I've been trying to look for good Asian food. I I was genuinely hunting for mapo tofu ingredients so I can make mapo tofu at home. And today I was looking up places to eat, and there was this place that said they make amazing. The pad thai is really good. So I was like, okay, that's it. I'm going there for pad thai. And it was this soggy, wet pad thai, and it was not mixed well. And I said, make it spicy. And
Oh
they said it would be
no.
very spicy.
Yeah.
And of course, it wasn't. And I'm like, can you please give me some spicy powder? Because this is meant to be spicy, you guys. So for me, I think food is an important factor. People are an important factor. And the sooner I can come to terms with, well, you're not in Asia anymore for you to get great Asian food, just deal with it. If you're not finding good food, maybe try and make it. Or just fly to Thailand or just fly to, wherever you want to go for Asian food. So I think the closest and the cheapest destination would be the UK to go for great Asian food. So maybe that's a coping
Oh my.
mechanism. Coping
Mr.
mechanism is to
Travel.
travel.
I think my coping mechanism is to maintain communication with friends abroad, to schedule date nights or morning in their schedule, but to make sure that at least I get to call a friend, because it helps me a lot to feel I'm not alone. But recently I realized that I think I'm ready to interact, because I think the last few months I was like, I'm still okay, I'm still okay. Now I think I'm starting to feel the need of interacting with other people and finding my own friends in town where, one weekend you could just, hey, do you want to grab coffee? Because I know my girlfriends are good, they're nice, but they're not here. You're not here. We have this podcast, which helps me a lot too. But it's also nice to have someone in town where you could just hang out with. So I'm ready. I'm ready for that. So I'm joining some local events. So this weekend, I'm joining a candle making experience. So I think those are my coping mechanism, is to join local events and just be open to possibilities, but also not putting pressure to myself of I need to make friends. Well, if I don't feel the vibe, then it's fine, right? So I think that's how I'm coping up this
And I must
days.
add, like having these conversations also for me to some extent is so important. So thank you. Somebody wrote to us on Instagram after watching our episode on YouTube.
Yeah.
It was and for
Priceless.
me, I think it's so important also to understand that we are not the only ones struggling, or it's not just me who's struggling, and that somebody else is, which is probably how they found this podcast, even though we've barely done any marketing. They were nice enough to reach out to us and sharing their experiences with us. So it's
I love
such a
it.
nice
Yeah.
way to build a community with people who have similar experiences. And that's something that I really appreciate. Which that note, I think we need to wind up. What do you think?
Wrap up. Yes. Yes. So this had been really a nice conversation, just talking about settling into a new country. And I think my key takeaway here is that be open to possibilities, right? So there will be good things, but also there will be frustrating things. But at the same time, we could do an active part in making sure that we settle in smoothly, right? So that effort also needs to come from us, that we need to make sure that we're settling in well. So I did mention last time that the problem that I'm facing now is like making friends as an adult. And why is it so hard? Is it just us having this issue? But I don't think so, because I hear this a lot from my friends as well. So that's going to be our next topic. So the challenge of finding a meaningful friendship. How do you maintain friendships when they're all over the world? So that I think will be another exciting topic for
Exactly.
all of us.
Absolutely.
Right,
So if you're
Annie?
in the middle of your honeymoon phase, or if you're struggling through your hangover of any big change that you're going through, just remember that you're not alone, and that's exactly why we're here. And we would love to hear from you. So if you're in the midst of a change, Tell us what stage you are in right now. Are you still in the honeymoon phase, or have you already hit reality check at this moment? Share your biggest moving struggles or generally change related struggles in the comment section, and we would love to address them in our next conversation. With that, we would like to close the episode. Roby, you want to make the closing statements?
Yes, of course. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and follow. Make sure to follow us on Spotify and Instagram for more episodes as we unpack the real, unfiltered side of living abroad. Thank you, everyone, for listening.